Yeah, the bridge is about a block away from the local elementary school. But because the bridge had gone through a lot of hurricanes, natural disasters, it was impossible for those children to walk over it. These kids were walking 3 miles to get to an elementary school that was just only a block away.
This is Salvis Unidos podcast with your host, Carlos Guadron.
Dr. Juan Antonio Sorto, co-founder of Friends of El Salvador, shares how they're bridging the Salvadoran experience between the U.S. and ES, and why cultural reconnection is just as important as infrastructure.
Ilusiones rotas de un momento que se fue. La verdad me agota.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Salvis Unidos. I am Carlos, your host. If you're listening to this on the audio version, just know that we do have a YouTube version of this podcast as well. So check it out, subscribe, like, you know the deal. But for all the audio listeners, you'll be able to listen whatever your preferred podcast platform is, so you can continue to support us there. Today we have a really cool guest. I'm really excited to have Dr. Juan Antonio Sorto, co-founder of Friends of El Salvador. Welcome, Juan.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Carlos. I have been feeling very welcome by not only you, but everyone else that I've been meeting over the last couple of days. I mean, it's wonderful to be here, and thank you so much for extending this invitation. Looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So we're in New York right now, and we connected through Cynthia from Shinka Food. So shout out to her for making the connection. And we're doing this in person in New York, which is my favorite way to do podcasts. Let's start a little bit about that. Let's talk a little bit about the meetup we just had. So it is the Monday after the meetup. And what was your objective in connecting with us and coming down to New York?
Yeah, so the objective is just to get to know other Salvadorians throughout the country and really throughout the world, where we are. We're everywhere, and one of the things that really has captured my attention, and I'm sure we'll cover this as we go along, is that we started an organization with the intentions of helping our brothers and sisters back home, but yet it has now morphed into like this thing about like connecting both our Salvadorian brothers and sisters in abroad and the ones that are currently in El Salvador. And so New York City, come on, like everyone knows New York City, who doesn't? But then what really captured my attention about New York City is the Salvadorian community and how they navigate through this big, city, and also just getting to know, like I said, people from the community, and then also seeing if there's a way that we can collaborate on not only on the mission that we're doing, but also things that are happening here in New York as well too. So it was just like a natural fit, and but definitely it's been very great.
Yeah, I'm so glad you guys could come out here and connect with the community. I think our mission overlaps really strongly in that regard, that we do want to connect Salvadorans like in the U.S., but we also want to connect Salvadorans in the U.S. to Salvadorans in El Salvador, because I think there's such a big break in the link there, even though a lot of us here feel like so connected to El Salvador, despite some of us never having gone. So I love that. But let's go back to the beginning of how Friends of El Salvador started. First, tell us, what is Friends of El Salvador and how did this project begin?
Yeah, so Friends of El Salvador, what I would like to say is a journey. It's not, we have a goal, we have a mission, but when you look at it at the end of the day, this is a journey of not only being able to help, El Salvador in a way that is very different, and what us have experienced when it comes to organizations that are doing mission work in El Salvador, but also a journey of just self-discovery for those of us who have never been to El Salvador, but have a deep connection because of our parents, grandparents, or even family and friends. That's one of the things that also captured my attention during yesterday's meet and greet, is that there were people who have no ties to El Salvador that wanted to come and learn more about not only Unidos, but also Friends of El Salvador. And that really also stood out. And that's why, we also called ourselves Friends of El Salvador, because this is a journey that is not necessarily about you being from El Salvador, but just being a human being and understanding that we do live in a global world now, with the access of technology. And while there are other countries that have needs, you can also say that in El Salvador we have needs, and then it's in this part of the world, in this part of the hemisphere. And so Friends of El Salvador, it's in essence a way to help our brothers and sisters who are currently living in the country, but also this is a journey of self-discovery for a lot of us who, again, for whatever reasons, we have a connection deep to this country, and now we're just trying to provide that avenue, this bridge of how you can be a part of it as well too, in a much more real-time basis, where you know that your donations or your assistance or your way of, if you or whatever you want to contribute to the organization, you're going to see it in real time and not necessarily like, 6 months from now, I'm going to see what my benefits are. No, if you want to do something that you are passionate about, then we welcome that. We welcome self-expression. We welcome creativity into the mix, because this country needs every single kind of resources that that is out there available. So yeah.
So what projects are you guys focused on? You're saying you can come and work on something you're passionate about. Can people come in and pitch their own projects, or are there projects you're already working on?
Yeah, so we get that question a lot. About we get a lot of emails throughout the day about people wanting to do good in this country, and then I guess they get pleasantly surprised when we tell them, when can you start? Because we're not here to just we're going to do this. No, when can you start? And so right now our primary focus is within the arts and health and wellness. And why do we focus on those three areas? That is because of a study that we are actually undertaking as part of Friends of El Salvador. So this is the unique part about our organization when you look at other organizations that are doing mission work in El Salvador. A lot of these other organizations, while their work is valid and we support every type of assistance that is coming down the pipeline to El Salvador, our work is much more focused on sustainability, meaning that while we could be working on projects in real time, our goal is a long-term strategic plan to where the community themselves can actually be empowered, where you as a donor, you as a volunteer, you as an ambassador can not only see that in real time, but also your children, your great-grandchildren, your great-great-great-grandchildren. That is our target. And so it's not one of these projects where you're just yes, we do have immediate results, meaning if you want to go down over there and create a mural, like we had the Salvadorian artist in Houston who went down to one of our communities, and she painted a mural for an entire week. And she got the community involved, and now we're offering art classes as a result of that mural. So once a week, we're working with these elementary schools, offering art class. And we're also having art workshops around these communities as well too. The other part of it is health and wellness. So when we started our study, one of the first things that the communities disclosed to us was the lack of child playgrounds within an hour and a half drive. So currently these communities only have access to public transportation twice a day, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So that means that any type of form of entertainment or child development is very hard to come by because they literally have to leave an hour and a half from their community to go have access to this. So when they told us that, obviously we're still a starter-up nonprofit organization, and so we don't have thousands of dollars to be able to address a lot of these projects that they want in their community. But one of the things that we decided to do was okay, if we're not able to raise the funds yet to build a playground, let's do programming, which is much more feasible. So once a month, we hire a Zumba instructor because we want to get the adults involved. Abuelita, we want her to be involved as well too on the health and wellness. And we also have 2 wheelchairs for those that are, that have a disability. And that's one thing about Friends of El Salvador is that we are an inclusive organization. We, for us, a handicap does not equal limitations. So Zumba is for the adults to get them involved. And then we have then that same day, we have our 3-mile walk, or up to 3 miles, I should say, to a local lake. And so the community comes together to, do these activities once a month. And that was a result, again, of our study. There are about 13 miles altogether in these that separates these communities. So we're still trying to make advancements as we go along. And then the fourth, which is that, what kind of projects, could people work on? I mean, it goes back to what is your talent? If, your reasoning about, you not going to El Salvador is because you don't know this country, not a problem. We have a team now that will get you from point A to point B. We have rooms that are available as well too, as long as you're there to support the mission. That's our only requirement. And so so far we've had a group of volunteers that have gone throughout different parts of the year to actually see what what we're doing, and they're taking up us on the offer. Like, hey, we have a room, because it serves us as a purpose as well too. You see it firsthand, you tell your friends, your family, and then you spread the word. Like, we are an actual organization, and we're not just putting pictures on that on our social media page.
You get to come and see it for yourself, and that's kind of the best word of mouth. It's not a faceless organization with helping people somewhere over there. It's like you can go and see and volunteer, maybe even just visit, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so we are in our 3rd year now. The next year, what we are planning to do, because we do have different types of fundraising programs that we do in the United States that align closely with the mission of Friends of El Salvador, or at least what we're doing over there. And so sustainability goes back to sustainability, right? So the community is the one that said, we need this, but we don't know how to get it. And it doesn't make sense for us to, create programs, that are not sustainable if the community doesn't want it. Now, because this will be a volunteer coming in, then we'll make exceptions to those rules, but we still have our long-term strategy. There might be someone that says, hey, I have, I don't know, I know how to cook. Okay, sure, come and do a cooking class for the kids and all that. So those opportunities are always ongoing, but we're not losing focus of our mission. And so, next year, part of our fundraising initiative that we're going to be implementing in the spring is that we're going to open it up for anyone that has never visited the country for a week long. We'll do a tour of El Salvador to all the different places around El Salvador. And then we'll end it up at one of the communities where, we'll do activities and so forth. So it's, cannot think of the actual word right now though, but it's a cultural experience. We'll be taking you to different parts of El Salvador where, has deep histories, tied back to the country. But then we'll end it up in the community so you can, engage with the community and so forth.
That's really cool. That's a really great opportunity for a lot of diaspora that never been back. Looking at your website, I saw one of the more impressive projects you've done is build this bridge. I know there's a lot of orgs doing a lot of stuff out there. And not to downplay any of the stuff they're doing, every single aspect of Salvadoran life needs help. But it's rare that I've seen an organization of your size build a physical infrastructure. Can you tell us the story behind this bridge that you built?
Yeah, it was one of our first projects that the community in Friends of El Salvador worked together. So the community had been asking in several international aid organizations for about 10 to 15 years. That's the story that the community is giving us. We're just relying the message there. They had different mayors that came through. Of course, presidents and elected officials. And every time there was an election season, of course, they would come and, make these promises. But for like a long time, this bridge went without any kind of rebuilding. And what was very important about this bridge was the access that it gave to these children to be able to go to their elementary school. So the bridge the bridge is about a block away from the local elementary school, but because the bridge had gone through a lot of hurricanes, natural disasters, it was impossible for those children to walk over it. And it's about 20 feet from the top of the bridge all the way until the actual river itself, because it goes underneath the river. And so it was very dangerous. So these kids were walking 3 miles to get to an elementary school that was just only a block away. And so when the community learned that we had this nonprofit, or already had created the nonprofit, they came, and said, hey, we need assistance. We've been seeing, we've been trying to get it. So then our strategy, again, it goes back to empowerment. We are not an organization that supports poverty. We are a community-based organization. We get a lot of requests from random people about abuelita needs access to dialysis, which is a very common thing in El Salvador. Or I'm sorry, I'm asking for help for paying my rent. And while those are important things, as an organization, we also have to understand our capacity and that means our limits to what the kind of services that we can provide. And it's also very important to understand that, because it keeps your mission in line, where donors feel comfortable about giving, right? So this bridge, we said, okay, what have you done to be able to address this problem, other than just talking to these elected officials, other than asking aid to these international organizations? And their response was just kind of like, well, that's it. And then we were like, well, I said, we have an option for you. How about we work with this collaboratively? You come up with 50% of the funds, we'll come up with the other 50%. And there's a hardware store located near the community, which also helped as well too. And so every week, these community parents and adults, I should say in general, they every day or every week they went to this hardware store and donated a penny, donated a nickel, donated a dime, donated a quarter, until they were able to reach that goal of $2,500, which was halfway of what they needed to build that bridge. So then we came in and put in another $2,500 for $5,000. And for those of you who are not following us on social media or on our accounts, there are pictures there. And in fact, we just published one just a month ago, this little girl crossing the bridge, and we put before and after. Yeah. So this was built back in 2022. It's still there. It's actually one of the spots that we use to do our walks every single month. So it's there. So yeah, so we believe in this 50-50 partnership, because it makes no sense for us to have paid for that bridge when the community is the one that has to use it every single day. And if you're not maintaining the infrastructure, then it's not helping anybody. So it's about helping them also maintain and take better care of the bridge and so forth. So that was our very first project. And as I mentioned about the elementary school, the paint job, that was our latest project that we just inaugurated as a 50-50 partnership. That one was a little bit more interesting, because the school principal had been trying to raise money for quite some time to do a pavilion to this 2-classroom school. And she got up to, I think it was either $400 or $600, around that amount. And so then we came in and said, okay, we're going to launch a Giving Tuesday fundraising campaign. And then anyone that follow us on social media in November, never saw that campaign coming into fruition, because we were literally like, we're going to launch this campaign, and in the period of 24 hours, we raised $2,200.
Wow.
Not only did they get a new pavilion, but we were able to replace the desk, the chairs of the schools. We also gave them a new street sign. Of course, the paint job as well too, which the local artist did volunteer her time, but we had to buy the paint and all that other stuff. And all together, when we did the numbers, it was, so monetarily, it was $2,600 if you include what the school had already raised, right? But altogether, that school, when we asked our artists, how much would you have charged for your services if we would have to have paid you? She said about $10,000.
Wow.
So it was $12,000 to $15,000
Wow.
that we were able to do in $2,500 or so.
That's incredible.
It is.
That's a big win.
Yeah, it is. But that's how we also do. Friends of El Salvador operates. It's about, collaborative efforts, whether you're donating $1 or you're donating a penny, just like this community did, and then letting us do the rest of the work, going out to all those sponsors and, door knocking. And then you have a resort here. And then that's the elementary school where we're offering the art classes. Mm-hmm. So that's another win as well, too, because it wasn't just like, we're going to do a paint job, but the artist herself, which, she's now back in Houston. I mean, she's seeing her creation, the backdrop of her a mural every single week because these kids are out there doing, art projects.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like we're just here and I know it's sustainability. It's growth, and it's seeing it in real time, that your work is not going to be just like, I did good one art project. I don't even know what community, but I did good. No, you're seeing it there. Mm-hmm, so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So there's a long history of like charities and international organizations coming and doing projects. And my master's degree was studying like photovoltaic, like solar panels installed in different communities. Mm-hmm. Many of them were in disrepair. I went to this one community in Usulutan, Berlin Usulutan, and they did a beautiful job installing all these solar panels, but more than 50% of them were dead. Mm-hmm. There was just no kind of thought of like, how are people going to sustain this? And there was kind of like not very much community involvement required. I'm curious, how did the community react when you told them, well, you raise half the funds? Because $2,500 is a huge amount for people that earn minimum wage in El Salvador. Mm-hmm. And I can imagine some of them might have been, bothered or scared by that. Mm-hmm. But the result, obviously, is going to be like now this community has ownership. Yeah. So what was the response from the people in the community when you approached them with this deal? Like you do have, we do have.
Skepticism. It was skepticism because, as I mentioned, these community have been advocating for this bridge for 15 years, 10 to 15 years, and all to empty promises, and from the government officials to international aid organizations. So that's one thing about El Salvador in doing mission work from a sustainable perspective, like the way we're doing, is that you have to also understand the long-term impact that these communities have been dealing with. Some of it is generational, wealth, but in obviously generational poverty. There it goes. Their grandparents passed it down to their parents, and now their parents passed it down to their children. I'm sure their children is passing it down to their great-grandchildren, where they've been taught to distrust anything that anybody tells them. And then when somebody does deliver, it's here and then I'm leaving. So they're not there with the community understanding what's happening, on a daily basis. And so it was skepticism from right from the start. But we also had been building this trust, within the community since 2009. So while Friends of El Salvador as an organization came in 2022, in 2009 is when we started making our groundwork through the delivery of these stuffed animals that we do every single year in these 14 communities. But that was just seasonal. That was not, or I'm there understanding what's happening. So even for an organization, or not really an organization just yet until 2022, even though we had been already been part of the community, that still wasn't enough for them. They still saw us like, well, we heard this a lot, but we're going to still go ahead and ask you, can you help us? Even though we're probably going to get the same responses that we've been getting for all these years. But because we were now an official nonprofit organization, that's what led them to ask. Because before then, we were just going there once a year during the Christmas holiday season. So the opportunity wasn't there for them to ask, nor was it the opportunity was there for them to, for us to say, can we help as well too? So this is kind of organically came together. We knew we wanted to do it. They knew they wanted us to do it, but could we do it together?
Right.
And that was like the groundbreaking. So what I tell people about community development and community engagement is that it's an ongoing process, that if it took us 13 years, because from 2009 until 2023, or even now, we're still building ground. So this thing about community engagement, it is a long-term vision. It's not like you're just going to go there, once a year. So so at first it was like, but they still did it, and so when they did it, I mean, we knew we were going to do it. That was not even an option for us. But they did it, and that's how it came about. And now they're actually very comfortable about asking for other projects. So this year, we're going to introduce a scholarship program for the communities. We're going to open up an application process where we're going to sponsor one infrastructure project, and we're going to have a panel. So I would love for you to review these applications when they actually become available, because we don't want the board of Friends of El Salvador to review those applications. We want different people from our communities outside Friends of El Salvador, the organization, to review them, so you can see firsthand what is it that the community actually needs. So we're thinking about, our latest, before our art project, we donated 1,000 bricks to the construction of this community center that's happening right now in this community. And so based on that 1,000 bricks that we donated, we said, okay, we're going to go ahead and do a scholarship for these communities. Once a year, we'll open it up. We'll donate like $1,000 to any project that they have that they would like to see. But obviously, we're going to let a panel of judges take care of that selection process. So,
wow, it's incredible. So it's really community engagement. It's not just like one person, one faceless board. I mean, it's not faceless, but you get the idea. Really engaging everyone. It's not just the org, it's a community in El Salvador, and there's the community in the U.S., the donors coming together to make it happen. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Where did you get this model from? Where did this come from? I don't think I've seen it before.
So our board, Friends of El Salvador board, is very diverse. Diverse not only in our education, but just in our background, right? So Friends of El Salvador, 2 of our board members are Mexican Americans. And then, of course, the rest of us are from El Salvador. And then 1 board member lives in El Salvador. We wanted that to be a staple of our organization. And as we grow, we're going to add more board members directly tied to the communities because of this cultural aspect that we need to make sure that we always address. And so we have board members that are finance. We have another board member that understands nonprofit from working for a Fortune 500 company, like that kind of level. Finance, marketing. We have a board member that understands marketing. He does marketing for nonprofits in Houston, direct ties to El Salvador. And then my background. So my background is where this comes from. So I'm an urban planner. I have a master's, I have a bachelor's in criminal justice. I have a master's in public administration. administration, which is within political science. And then my PhD is in urban planning with a focus on community development. And so being able to not only understand community development from an academic perspective, but from an actual practitioner. So I spent the majority of my adulthood as I was working on my PhD, doing community engagement in Houston, and working directly with nonprofit organizations that are involved in community development. And so the last organization that I worked for before I became a professor at 2 universities in Houston it's an organization that they have access to parks. So Highline here in New York, okay, similar. It's similar. So I work for Highline, Houston-based. In fact, Highline is they do subcontracting for a lot of parks throughout the United States, urban parks. So they create trails, create green spaces. And so I work for the Buffalo Bio Partnership, great organization in Houston. Every 4th of July, they do a fireworks display there, and it's the largest in the city of Houston. And so having that experience, not only academically, but also working as their community engagement director for this nonprofit organization, really allowed me to, do what we are doing now with the research part of it, Friends of El Salvador in El Salvador. And so it's a very foreign concept for a lot of us even here too, especially because the United States, in terms of planning, has not been. We're still young in that sense, but because we saw the necessities that are much more dire in El Salvador, that's another reason why we launched Friends of El Salvador. We were looking at our own backyard here in the United States, and we're still givers. I mean, we still donate to charitable causes, but then we were like, well, let's see if we can do something different in El Salvador. I mean, it doesn't have to be big, but let's try to figure out if we can. And so that whole concept about community development comes because we have very diverse backgrounds and we all complement each other. And those who are not part of the board, they serve as an advisory to the board. And they also complement every other little aspect that we're doing as well, too. And so this is why, I try not to be in front of the cameras because it's really a collective effort that is happening here and over there, and it's just organically coming together, so it's been
gotcha.
Beautiful.
Well, now we got at least 2 cameras on you, so a little bit different for this podcast. I want to talk a little bit about the partnerships you guys have, other community partnerships, the kind of corporate or private donations. Can you tell us a little bit about those, how they came about, and maybe 1 or 2 really interesting ones?
Yeah. So we understand that most of our Salvadorian community in the United States, they're blue-collar workers, they're trying to make it, just like most people, obviously, in the United States. And so when we came together to strategize about our fundraising objectives and how we're going to do that, it was very clear to us that we were not going to advance financially just depending on the Salvadorian community because of the necessities that we have internally here in the United States. And so that's where the board, the diversity of the board comes into play because the 2 finance board members, they have an understanding of what the corporate giving looks like. When I've been in meetings that I've been invited to, I ask one of my finance board members to come along with me because they know how to dissect numbers without even writing it in a notepad. And so while we are proud to be from El Salvador, and we have a lot of, obviously, great support from the Salvadorian community, mainly within the in-kind donations, right? Like, for example, this podcast, that's in-kind. Spaces. So like so our galas, now we're going on our 3rd year. It has been done at a Salvadorian art gallery owned by a Salvadorian, another space, a coffee shop owned by a Salvadorian. So those have been like very helpful for us because you need good presentations to draw in your big donors, right? And so our strategy has been, our Salvadorian community understanding the hardships. So let's see about the corporate side of it. And the corporate side, the interesting partnerships have come from not only the way we are doing programming in El Salvador, but also looking at our own passions. And one of the common denominators I think the entire board has, even before we knew each other, is that we love sports and we love running. Like running has been our biggest, stress relief. And so when we started implementing these health and wellness initiatives, one of the first things that, we did was like, what kind of brand of shoes do you wear to run? And we started, comparing, and it's like Brooks is one of those running companies that is supporting Friends of El Salvador. Last year, they donated brand new pair of tennis shoes. We received a $5,000 donation of brand new tennis shoes from Brooks. And then we received an additional $5,000 from them monetarily, because it's not just about the in-kind donations, but it's the operational cost that you need to actually sustain, a nonprofit. And so, so Brooks is one of our major sponsors. The other one is United Airlines, and they have donated tickets for us to be able to take some of these materials to El Salvador, and also just whenever we have galas, they've been also been very helpful for us in terms of donating tickets so we can raffle them or auction them off to other during these events. And then we have a count list of, obviously, if you look at our website, our partnership, we are very proud about that. And these partners have given a minimum of $5,000 or more. So that's the other thing. But overall, we've established partnerships with Garmin. That was one of our earlier sponsors, actually. Garmin watches, for those of you who may not be familiar with. So our very first official walk that we did in El Salvador, you go into, you scroll down or you see it online, it had the Garmin arch. And so Garmin donated, and they actually donated about 4 watches as well too to the community. And these were pretty expensive watches.
Yeah,
so
they are.
Yeah.
I wish I could have a Garmin watch.
Yeah, so they were very cooperative and all that. So just finding these different partners, in ways where it not only gives them credibility to you're helping another person, but also how do you go into these markets? So that's one thing about these corporate companies, is that they will come out with a new line of shoe every 6 months. So our initial contact with Brooks was like, what do you do with your shoes after you come up with the new model? And then their response was, we give them to an elementary school near in these communities. And then we were like, well, not every elementary school may actually accept these, they may accept a pair or two, but what happens to the ones that you don't get rid of, And that's where the whole conversation started with Brooks. And that's how the conversation starts with a lot of companies for us. Is sometimes it's not just about the monetary, but it's just let's plant the seed and then get that big donation that we're really asking for. So they want to see that their work is being done in real time as well too. So it's building trust. Right.
Awesome. So you've built this bridge, you've built this mural. There's arts classes, there's Zumba and walks. What are the projects coming up for Friends of El Salvador in the coming, let's say, year or two?
Yeah. So we really want to. Again, we don't want to venture off what we have in terms of our mission, right? But we really want to see much more of a connection with the universities or the education institutions in the United States and El Salvador. So infrastructure, the lack of internet access is obviously extremely, high over there. And so what we're trying to do is bridge a gap where right now we have interns from both countries. So we have interns from the University of Houston downtown. That's one of the universities that I work for. So this past year, most of our marketing, for those of you who are looking at our page right now or will have a chance, those pictures and videos, they're coming from interns. Like, I don't think none of us are in our board. I mean, marketing, yes, but I'm referring to, like, we have our own jobs and all that, but to be there and look and doing a video and all of that, we're just not savvy like that, And so our interns here in El Salvador in El Salvador and the United States are collaborating. And a clear example of that was our Given Tuesday campaign, where we needed the videos to be in English and in Spanish. And so both of them, these interns, not both of them, but both in schools, joined forces to where the same video was some in Spanish. Our interns in Spanish, in San Miguel did the version in Spanish, and our interns here did the version in English. And so we want to definitely see much more collaborative effort, much more in universities like NYU. Just came back from a conference from Brown University, where we presented our initial findings of our research that we have ongoing. And we were also there to make sure that we can get much more established relationships and partnerships. And so how do we bridge this gap in the education field? It's extremely important. So we're aggressively going after the universities, especially now in a time when the universities have lost a lot of funding. And so they are looking to see where they can partner, still deliver their high intense curriculum, especially with study abroad programs, but in a way where it doesn't cost them arm and a leg. Well, we already have the infrastructure in place in El Salvador. All you have to do is, when you want to start, when you want to do it, and make sure that it works perfectly fine. And so that's where Friends of El Salvador, we want to really tighten the research unit in utilizing these partnerships, like an NYU or a Brown or Yale or any university that has an international program. And how can we really partner, bring these universities here and the universities over there in El Salvador through Friends of El Salvador and have that research base. So,
That's really interesting. So tell us more about this research. Like, what exactly are you researching? What conclusions are you hoping to draw from this research?
Great question. So when we started this research 2 years or in 2022, what we did was we reached out to a university in San Miguel, which is where our communities are located, and it's a private university, Gerardo Barrios to be exact. And so we reached out to them and with a proposal to teach their students and some of their faculty on how to conduct census, basically. It's ethnographic research, but for those of you who don't know, it's census, basically. And they were very intrigued by that. So what they gave us was students and 2 professors to be able to go once a week, door knock on every single one of these communities, households, and ask them a series of questions. And you can see that also on our social media platform. So we have been asking them, because it's still ongoing. We've been asking community. We spend about an hour and a half or so each. We split into teams. We go into one day of the week. We split into teams and we ask basic questions such as their education level, how's your economic status, and also questions about migration, which is very important. And I think that's another aspect too about Friends of El Salvador, is that we are in essence are trying to understand migration before it even happens, before they even have a thought of making that journey back. Because one of the things that we've learned through this research is that people don't want to leave El Salvador, contrary to popular culture or belief. They want to be there, even in the times that it was unsafe. At least in this sector of the communities, people didn't leave because of crime. What we have learned over the last 2 years is that when people have decided to leave these communities, it is because of climate change. So it's climate migration that is driving the community's members to search better places abroad. And then they see crime as the second and even sometimes third. So when the instability of the weather patterns, when you have corn and you have have cucumbers, which these communities depend on, and the rain, there's an excessive rain, they lose all their crops. After 3 or 4 weeks of constant rain, you're going to lose your crops. And after many years, people have decided that this was enough for them, and they have decided to migrate. So being able to, this is where the research part comes very handy. And the other part of it is like, long-term partnership with the universities will be nice to be able to take a group of researchers on how to educate the communities on how to properly farm, because they're only doing it because that's the only way they know, and so there are different tools that they can use, so they don't have to necessarily like, oh, it rains tomorrow, well, it's okay because I'm still going to have a different format of farming. So that part has been very interesting, that the number one cause of why people have migrated to the United States is because of climate and not crime. The other part of it has to do with the economic hurdles that these communities undertake, and this is why research is very important. So over the years, there has been plenty of international organizations that have come and done programming in these communities, and oftentimes they only come with like very specific goals. We're going to create a program that is 6 months, to execute on women entrepreneurs. And then they give them a nice certificate. They go through the 6 months. They give them a nice certificate. But then when we've asked them, how have you used that certificate that organization gave you? They were like, we haven't. And why you have not? Well, because in order for us to sell our product, we have to go an hour and a half to the nearest mercado to be able to sell our products. And if I don't have transportation, or the transportation only happens twice a week, twice a day, then that's next to impossible for me to go sell any of the product. That is where research is fundamentally important to the success of our organization, because we cannot be creating a program without understanding the root causes. It wasn't enough for them. They got all the knowledge and skills that they needed to become independent, economically independent, but they still don't have the means on how to actually execute that, And so being able to, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution to these problems, but the research component, it definitely is the biggest part that we are proud of, that we're undertaking.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds like you guys are doing a lot of good work. So having said that, I mean, in the beginning you said like you can just come approach us with your passion. But let's say right now I just listened to this podcast or watched it and like, okay, I want to do something with Friends of El Salvador. What can people do to get involved?
Yeah, look, if you're not able to go to El Salvador, we're always asking for our ongoing donations, right? So how, and this has actually become accidental, but also very fruitful for us. So in Houston, a lot of members who are part of the Salvadoran community, and actually some of them are not, they've organized toy drive for us. They've organized shoe drives for us. They've organized school supplies drives for us. And as far as shipping, how to get to that, don't worry about that. We'll cover the shipping to making sure that, that whether you're in New York, you're in California, or wherever part of the world, getting those supplies over to Friends of El Salvador is not a factor. You just reach out to us. We'll set up, a strategy and all of that, and the finance part from that angle. It's not a problem. So it pretty much, or doing, if you're a musician and you want to, do a concert, small, set up a small little pot, little shop or whatever. I mean, there's endless of opportunities for you to be involved with Friends of El Salvador. We do have an ambassador program that we feel very strongly, and we feel strong. We feel very fortunate about that came out of it organically. So we have volunteers. Volunteers are those that do, once or twice or maybe 3 times a year or whatever. But then our ambassadors go above and beyond. These are the ones that are setting up the shoe drives. These are the ones that are like going to El Salvador, painting a whole mural. That's the ambassador part. And what the ambassador do, we'll give you a shirt, we'll give you all the necessary things that you need to be able to market Friends of El Salvador. But the ambassadors are the ones that are utilizing their talent. So we have a chef, for example, who's one of our ambassadors, and Chef Evelyn Garcia. She owns. So when Top Chef Houston did their filming a couple of years ago, she was the 3rd runner-up, and she's from El Salvador. She's from La Union, and Chef Evelyn Garcia has donated religiously to our fundraising events and food that she could be she charges a lot in her restaurant because her restaurant is now considered James Beard in that level.
Wow.
Yeah, she's in that level. Like her restaurant is a fusion between Salvadorian and Asian because it's a co-owned, but she donates the food for us in order for us to be able to do the fundraising event. So she's an ambassador because of the fact that she does that for us, So whatever talent you have, whether it's running, whether it's cooking, whether it's a musician, and we're not saying you have to meet a certain quota. Like, to us, that's not what we're asking. We have never. The only time we talked about money here is to give you the example of what Brooks gave us.
Right.
But are we asking people for like, this is how much? No, we understand this is you. Sharing your experience, sharing your passion. So what we say is, whatever that passion is, if you don't know, then let's work it out together, and we definitely will be able to help along the way. We don't want this to be just you. Like, I want to make sure that people understand this. When people come to us, we want this to be a fun experience, an enjoyable experience for everybody. Then the other part, how do people get involved? If you're ever in El Salvador and want to go do any kind of work with us, whether it's 3 hours or whether it's a whole day, it doesn't matter. We'll accept your help. And that's what happened with Julio, one of our recent volunteers. He was visiting El Salvador for like a whole week, and he just went for like 2 hours and did a paint workshop with the kids, and that was fine for us. That was awesome. Cool. So whatever your passion is, we'll definitely get it.
Okay, awesome. And last question: where can people find Friends of El Salvador? Websites, social medias?
Yeah, so we have social media everywhere. So TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Friends of El Salvador. Very simple. Friends of El Salvador. As far as our webpage is friendsofElsalvador.org. Just do a Google search and you'll find Friends of El Salvador, or just type it there. Any kind of donations, anything, is always welcome. Any kind of assistance is always, again, appreciative.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, Juan, it's been great having you here. It's great. I love that you guys came over to New York. I feel like this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, as they say. So I'm excited to see what you guys do in the future, and I'm excited to work with you guys in the future. And again, thank you so much for stopping by and being on our podcast.
Thank you so much.
Music for this episode courtesy of Planeta 23, a Salvadoran indie rock band. Thank you for listening to the show. Salvis Unidos is produced and edited by Carlos Guadron. Visit salvisunidos.com for show notes. Like the show? Join our Patreon and help us continue making content for Salvadoreños como vos.